episode number 18 of Fight Briefing. I hope everybody is
Wonderful.
in the chat. Oh wait, let me try that. Let me just try that one more time. Hold on.
Wonderful.
That's better. All right. I hope everybody's wonderful in the chat. I'm sorry we are 10 minutes late tonight, but I had a few things that I had to take care of. And yeah, we are in episode 18 of Fight Briefing. And it doesn't feel like 18 episodes. Honestly, it feels like we still just started the show. We're already, it's kind of going by pretty freaking fast. So that's exciting. All right, guys. Let me just get right into it. We're covering UFC Fight Night 167 this weekend. Anderson versus Blachowicz, number 2. Now, after a big pay-per-view with UFC 247 last weekend, this weekend is going to see a smaller show, I guess you could say, for the world's biggest promotion in the UFC. UFC Fight Night 167 goes down in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. It's the first time the UFC has been to New Mexico since their Albuquerque card back in 2014. And while the card, as you can imagine, is not completely loaded with fights, there are still a handful of fights on the card that we can use to make this show.
Man, you better back up or you're going to go to sleep. Man, you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Well, that was loud.
Hey. How are all the wonderful holes out there? Waving.
What's up, PBR Street Gang? Hope all is
Wonderful.
one of those two. All right, guys. So let me just start with who is on the card for UFC Fight Night 167. Let me just go all the way to the first fight of the night. Lando Vannata versus Yancy Medeiros. I like this fight a lot for quite a few different reasons, and we'll get into it. If nothing else, this sounds like a wildly exciting fight for 155 pounds Vannata.
Man, you better back up or you're going to go to sleep. Man, you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
What's up, Carnage?
J. Crew baby, let's go. Come on, JBH, you already know Corey has this in the fucking bag. Love you, JBH, you are the queen.
Love you.
We will make sure you win this upcoming Fook Off Friday.
Oh, it cut off. What happened? It's let's go. Oh. Thank you, Carnage. I'm starting to get my hopes up a little bit, to be honest, because every Fook Off Friday I've been losing, but I do appreciate it. So Lando Vannata versus Yancy Medeiros. Vannata hasn't really lived up to the potential he showed back in his insane UFC debut against Tony Ferguson back in 2016. He went 2-3-2 since then, so it's a little concerning. His overall game is good. He's shown that he can be beaten by more polished fighters in both grappling and striking, so that's something that he should be pretty concerned about. But yeah, I like this fight a lot for being the first fight on the main card, especially for a fight night. The second fight, Rogerio Bontorin versus Borg. I like this fight simply because I'm interested in what Borg has to bring on Saturday night. I think it's going to be interesting since he's been on a little bit of an interesting run. And Bontorin is not someone that we should really sleep on, even though he's not someone of extreme name value. The third fight on the main card, Brock Weaver versus Kazula Vargas. I could give a fuck, honestly. I'm not too interested in this fight. And, yeah, I just don't care. Montana De La Rosa versus Romero Borella. I don't like this one either. So this is going to be an interesting fight briefing for everyone because I could give a fuck. Diego Sanchez versus Michel Pereira is a co-main event. And I actually like this one for a co-main. It's a little bit weird to see this fight of all fights on the co-main event, but, I'm not going to complain. I don't mind it. I like it a lot. And then we've got Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz for the main event of the evening. And let's be fair, this is just a fight night. This is not a pay-per-view. Moss brought up an excellent point earlier today. He said, why are fight nights 6 fights and pay-per-views are 5 fights? Because nobody really cares about the fight nights too much because there's not always that much name value, and sometimes it's not even worth watching. And pay-per-views are more exciting. They're more thrilling. We're paying to see the fights, so we would want to pay to see one extra fight on that card rather than a fight night. And it does make perfect sense. I would definitely be asking that same question. So, excuse me, I just burped, guys. Let's just get right into it. I'm gonna talk about the first fight of the night, and then we'll move on. Give you guys my picks for the evening. Get your guys' picks for the evening, and yeah, let's do it. Let's see who's in the chat real quick. Sheldon Snow says, this is a good fight night. Sean Hart, the MMA-Holes, congratulations on your new sponsor. Yes, we will talk about that, Sean Hart. John You Chode Liquor says, Ryan Reedy. Ike Baby says, hey, hi everyone, says Ashley Lane. Is Moss making dinner? No, I think Moss is watching TV or something like that, or on his phone, most likely. All right. So what Sean Hart mentioned, and thank you, Sean Hart, for bringing it up. We do have a new member of the family in Mystic Roots. So thank you to Mystic Roots for joining the family. Discount code MMA-Hole, all one word. You get 15% off your entire purchase. And we're really excited to have him on board, as he's not only a sponsor, but a member of the community. So it's really exciting to work with him. We've had a great start so far, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for the sponsorship. So everyone, welcome Mystic Roots. Let's see a welcome Mystic Roots in the chat if you want your CBD. Mystic Roots, please and thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
All right, guys. Now let's get to the main card. Lando Vannata versus Yancy Medeiros is the first fight. Now, I think with this fight, we're definitely in for a little bit of a treat. And Vannata has a pretty unique fighting style, if you ask me. He's got an extremely explosive striking game. He's super creative with the punches that he throws. He's also got some pretty interesting kicks that he likes to mix into his game. I feel with a guy who is extremely agile, with both his footwork and his head movement, a guy who's pretty squirmy. In Medeiros, we're probably going to see a lot more of those kicks by Vannata in this fight. He's also got a solid chin, Vannata. Now, the only downside that I would see for Vannata here is that if he is not given enough room in this fight, it's a lot more difficult for him to operate in these types of fights and to be able to perform the way that we would expect him to. If Medeiros leads into him early on into the first round of the fight, Vannata could be in a lot of trouble. Now, Medeiros, on the other hand, is an exceptionally wild brawler. If you ask me, I would say that he's the type of fighter to pretty much be able to win from any skill set, right? He's pretty well-rounded. I wouldn't say, technically speaking, that he's any better than Vannata, but if you were to speak in terms of his physical and mental toughness, I would say that there's definitely some competition there. He's also one of the most durable fighters on the roster. He does have 2 losses against him, but honestly, I wouldn't really argue those losses, simply because one came in a brawl with Cowboy, of all people, which is an extremely tough opponent, and the other one he was completely outclassed with incredible wrestling by Gregor Gillespie, who is also kind of an animal inside the cage. Vannata is neither of those 2 types of fighters. So this should be a bit more of a fair matchup for Medeiros. Outside of that, I think Medeiros does have a granite chin. It's gotten him past some dangerous fighters like Alex Oliveira and Eric Silva, and both of whom were defeated by TKO. Well, so I think that while the punishment that he endured in his losses, including Francisco Trinaldo, was absolutely inhuman, it's something that he can still definitely withstand. So bottom line for this fight is I feel that Medeiros might get himself into a little bit of trouble in this fight. He is naturally slower than Vannata in almost always that could be hittable. I don't think Vannata, though, has enough to put such a tough opponent away like Medeiros in one blow. And eventually he's going to tire and he's going to find himself being worn down because of Medeiros' gutsy style. So I'm going to have to go with Medeiros by KO TKO. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. Same here. Shannon says, Flat Earth Deacon posts what it do, baby. Masa drinking CBD coffee on the couch, watching JBH on his phone. No, he's probably watching something else on his phone. If I had to guess, he doesn't care about fight briefing. Post says, Groovy for the win. Justin Jr. says, Jesse, what's your thoughts on Verdum versus my friend Alexei Olenek? Verdum versus Olenek. I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts. Got to give me some time to think about that one, man. Yancy says PBR. Not sure, says Boss. Ray says, I'm with you, JBH. Yancy says Shannon Stewart. Draw says Bruce Gullickson. Masa Stone on the couch. Nah, he doesn't smoke. He doesn't get stoned. Flat Earth, no, not yet. But on Twitter, he retweeted some stuff, so he must be fine. He was in Discord too the other morning. Are we talking about Drunk Savage? Has anybody heard from him lately? I hope he's okay. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight of the card. We have Rogerio Bontorin versus Ray Borg. Is it Rogerio or Rogerio? Can someone please clarify that for me? Because I think where I'm from, it's Rogerio. But I'm pretty sure some people might call him Rogerio. I don't know. All right, now, I'm going to be honest with this fight, guys, and say that I'm surprised to see Borg back down to 125 pounds. He didn't look super great in his bantamweight debut. He took a loss to Casey Kenny. And he did defeat Gabriel Silva, which was pretty interesting. That was his last outing, but that was at 135 pounds. And he did appear to struggle a little bit, and I think he struggles more to hit that flyweight limit. So to see him struggle again here wouldn't be a surprise, to be quite honest, but not impossible to see him do it without too many issues. Now, let's start with Bontorin, right? Bontorin is 2-0 in the UFC. I wouldn't let that fool you because I know it's such a tiny record. Bontorin actually has 17 fights in MMA, and 16 of which he has won. But I do have to note that a lot of those opponents he faced before the UFC were not all that great, not really UFC material. Now, his debut is a completely different story. He faced opponents before the UFC, like I said, that weren't good, but in his debut, he faced Magomed Bibulatov, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who is a pretty impressive fighter. And Bontorin was able to completely outwork him in a lot of different ways, and I think we got to see a little bit more from him that we hoped to see in that debut. Now, his second UFC fight was pretty fun to watch as well. It did end by doctor stoppage because he had ended up cutting his opponent's eye completely wide open, and the doctor ended up stopping that fight. So it's clear here that Bontorin is and can continue to be a pretty exciting fighter to watch with the right opponents, and I really feel that someone like Ray Borg is the right opponent for him. Now, I'd be lying if I said that Borg wasn't one of the main reasons that I'm not at least a little interested in this fight. I'm interested in seeing what kind of Borg we're going to get this Saturday, given that he's been on a little bit of a weird run. It's been like wins and losses and wins and losses, wins, losses. It's a really weird situation with Ray Borg, and then of course the whole Mighty Mouse situation. But as far as Borg is concerned, at his best, he's a dangerous fighter in pretty much all areas. We all know that he is primarily a grappler. Although he's a more than willing striker, being a grappler is kind of where he got his name in the first place. But I think what's more thrilling than that is his wrestling and his ground and pound. We see a lot of power from him that maybe we don't expect to see, right? I find this to be an extremely fascinating fight simply because he's not taking a layup here, and he could arguably lose to this one just simply based on an exciting style of fighting in Bontorin. So bottom line for this fight, guys, this could well be a contender for fight of the night, so I want you guys to really try to pay attention to this fight. I'm clearly going for the less experienced fighter here, but I think that's okay. I do have some worries for Borg trying to make it back to 125 pounds with a full gas tank, and if he runs out of steam, then of course Bontorin is that type of fighter who could easily push the pace and kind of force him to wilt down and stretch. I'm also a firm believer, though, that we could be looking at a potentially dangerous contender here in this division going forward that could maybe have some semblance of a title contention. I mean, we don't know, but we could see. So my pick for this fight is Bontorin by decision. Let me know who you guys have in the chat, Borg or Bontorin. Blue Couture says, this place is a dump. All you filthy animals suck. President Vigo, who is Dell? Ray for the win. Says Post Boss says, my shit weighs 125 pounds. Tour does it all says Dillashaw. PBR says Borg. Flatter thinking not Borg. Shannon Stewart Borg. Jonathan Wilberding says Dillashaw is recovering from an accidental APU overdose. Adam Victory says, new as of last week. What's up, Holes?
Wonderful, wonderful.
What's up, Adam Victory? Bruce Galixian says Borg. Picking Ray the Borg all day says Bruce. Sean Hart says 50 likes. Do we have 50 likes, my friend? We do. Put your fist in the air.
I've got 50 likes, you got 50 likes, we've got 50 likes, MMA-Holes 50 likes. I've got 50 likes, you got 50 likes, we've got 50 likes, MMA-Holes 50 likes. I've got 50 likes, you got 50 likes, we've got 50 likes, MMA-Holes 50 likes. The dislikes can choke on a dick.
Penis. All right, guys. Thank you to the however many people who are choking on a penis right now. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight of the night. Now, the UFC decided not to provide a picture of Brock Weaver, so I decided to do it for you guys. What do you think? Is this racist? Because this is a black and white picture. It's the only picture I could find on Google. Thank you, Brock Weaver, for being here. All right, Brock Weaver versus Rodrigo Vargas. I'm honestly not sure what to think here. Let me just start by saying both of these fighters are not the most proven in the UFC, and I honestly don't give a flying fuck about this fight. It has nothing to do with Brock Weaver. It has nothing to do with Vargas. Yeah, listen, I'm sure there are some fans of both in the chat, and I don't have any hate or animosity towards them, but I just don't care about this fight. Weaver has 14 wins on his ledger, which is great, but that doesn't really mean too much to me, given that it seems he's not really a power puncher. And he just seems like the type of fighter who works the range the entire fight for all of his opponents. So, Vargas was beaten in his debut. So that's not a really good start in the UFC. Quite honestly, I forgot about that fight about 5 minutes after it happened because there was nothing worth remembering in it. I don't think we saw him at his best in that fight. He took the fight on late notice, and it was, like I said, pretty forgettable. So the only reason I remember now is because I had gone back to see the history of these two fighters when I was getting ready to put the notes together for this fight. And honestly, it's just difficult to assume a winner in this fight simply because what we do know about one fighter, we don't know about another. One fighter we know is not very aggressive and likes to play the range. And then another fighter we don't really know much about at all because he hasn't been in the UFC long enough. The footage that I have seen about Vargas that is available shows that he is aggressive in a lot of areas and he does appear to be a solid athlete, but I really don't know if he has enough to kind of outclass Weaver in this fight. So bottom line, honestly, there is no bottom line. I feel this is going to be a good or a semi-decent fight, but I also think it's going to be a fight that we just want to be over already. I think it's going to be one of those fights that everyone's going to take as a piss break, and we'll probably play a commercial in the middle of it, you know. So I'm going to go Weaver by decision simply because he, albeit boring at times, he does know how to play the game of the range, and he is a pretty decent striker, and he's the kind of fighter who's just in it to fight. But I could care less about this fight if I had to be perfectly honest. All right, let me know who you guys have, Brock Weaver or Vargas, in the chat. And D-Rest says the earth is not a fucking spinning globe. D-Rest says Flat Earth Deacon. I got the native says Flat Earth. 100% says Vigo. Ray says Picking the Weaver. DDS. Ha Scalpum. LOL. Jeez. Love it. Weaver says Ray. Aiden says Weaver. Dream Weaver. DDS. Rodney Smith Weaver. Chris Houston Brok. A PBR Weaver. Flat Earth Deacon Weaver. D-Rest says Broccoli. Rogerio Weaver. Shannon Stewart Weaver. Arturo Does It All. Artem Lobov. Jeremiah says the Earth is a parallelogram. Rodney Smith, Sexy Jess. Sean Hart, I'll do more research on these two. Vigo Stockholm and JBH, I worship your bunghole. I worship yours. Ann H. Weaver, President Vigo, rest in peace, Drunk Savage. Pale Monkey, I'll take whoever Mystic isn't picking. Why would you do that? I'm sorry, guys, I forgot to turn it off. Once we get to 100 likes over here, then I'll turn it back on.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay. Let's move on to the next fight. Oh, sorry, Weaver. You gotta go. You can't stay to the party. It's time to go. Okay. Montana de la Rosa versus Mara Romero Borella. I think it's Borella, actually. Here we go again with another female fight that nobody really cares all that much about. But it's a fight night, so I can't really complain. Outside of the women's featherweight division, it's hard not to feel like the female flyweight division is currently the weakest in the UFC, which really sucks. But that's just the way it is. Case in
Man, you better back up or you're going to go to sleep. Man, you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Carnage. JBH, you should buy Mario Kart so you and Moss can play it on gaming Sundays. I want to see how competitive you guys get over Mario Kart and its addictiveness. Mahahaha.
We have a Crash Bandicoot racing game that we haven't played yet that Drunk Savage got us. I mean, we've played it off air, but we've never played it on air for you guys to see, so maybe we'll go ahead and give that a shot. Thank you, Carnage, for the donation. If you guys would like to donate, there's a Streamlabs link in the description below and a super chat button if you'd like to interrupt the show. And also our patrons. Thank you to everyone who's a patron so far helping us support the show. We're almost there. We've almost got ourselves to moving point. All right. De La Rosa, Montana De La Rosa. Now, I think it's safe. Fuck, I can't talk today. No! All right. Now, I think it's safe to start with the fact that both of these girls are pretty good grapplers. In fact, their grappling kind of outshines any other skills that they really have inside the octagon. De La Rosa obviously took all of her wins by submission in her MMA career, and Borella submitted Faria during her debut. I think UFC career, not MMA career. Now, on the contrary, evidence would suggest that neither woman is really the greatest striker, particularly De La Rosa, who's honestly shown very little in terms of kickboxing, in terms of that game thus far in her entire career. Honestly, this fight could be extremely close if you ask me. Now, Borella is not the most natural striker either inside the cage, so something to keep in mind, but she does appear to be a bit more fluent on the feet than the likes of her opponents. So Borella was also doing quite well against Lauren Murphy before she was TKO'd in that fight by a knee. So that's something that you can kind of give her as far as skill sets are concerned. Now, although De La Rosa was arguably impressive with those submissions on her record, we do have to keep in mind that those opponents could very well be considered layups, if you want to call them that, for her, as they didn't really match in skill. Now she's finally being given someone who kind of matches in skill. So I think bottom line for this fight, I would honestly argue that De La Rosa is simply not the most physically powerful fighter in the division. With that in mind, I think Borella might struggle a little bit to impose herself early on, but eventually her physicality and overall skills will sort of take over and allow her to do enough to end in a clear-cut decision. So I'm going to go with Borella by decision. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. Check your UFC and ESPN Plus 25 picks. Goat Milk says D Rest. President Vigo says NASA was founded by Nazis, bro. Flat Earth Deacon says NASA going nowhere since 1958, bro. Scott McLean. Operation Paperclip. Pulse Reloaded. Let's be honest, if both of these girls were cut from the UFC tomorrow, would anyone care? And that's a fair point, Pulse. I'm actually kind of glad that you said that, because if I had to be perfectly honest, like, this fight I could give a fuck about, and the last fight, the Brock Weaver fight, I'm not too interested in. And it's not that it's the fighters, it's just the UFC didn't do a very good job at promoting those fighters to make them anything of name value. So to throw them onto a main card and expect us to be excited to see them fight is baffling to me. On that same note, they just got done cutting Brad Katona, and I actually liked that dude. He was actually interesting to watch. So I would have rather see him on the main card of this fight night than these two girls, or even honestly the Weaver fight, like or if we saw like Weaver versus, I mean, you know, there's other fights I could think of that they could have put together that would make more sense and would be good matchups for the fighters, and they just didn't do that. I think this is a fight night that they just got pretty lazy with because of the excitement of the last two pay-per-views. So it is what it is. I mean, we're getting fights, so you know, yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the next card, guys. All right, we have Diego Sanchez versus Michel Pereira, which is the co-main event of the card. Now, I like this fight a lot. I love watching Diego Sanchez, and I think he's always been exciting because he kind of goes in there and, you know, just he goes in headstrong with a lot of things. But I can understand it why you would think that this fight is a little bit odd. I'm not the biggest fan of Michel Pereira for a lot of reasons, and I'll get to that. But between two of the UFC's most eccentric fighters, I think it was a good fight to put together for a co-main event. So Sanchez, let's start with him. He certainly has Pereira, if you ask me, when it comes to experience. In fact, Sanchez is leading into his 42nd professional fight, which is extremely crazy. And this is his 29th octagon appearance. Now, I was reading an article, I think it was Sportskeeda who said it, and they said, let me just pull it up over here. They said, there aren't many fights still kicking around from his generation. He's the last man standing from the original season of The Ultimate Fighter, and despite the damage he's taken over the years, he still seems remarkably healthy. And that really stood out to me because it's nothing but the truth. Now, it's easy to say that over the last 15-some years that Sanchez has been around, that he's most certainly honed his craft in that time. However, he is still the type of fighter.
Man, you better back up or you're going to go to sleep. Man, you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Who the fuck are those two bitches? They both look like the two chicks Covington paid off to be by his side.
All right. I guess you could, yeah, you could say that for sure. They definitely look like two women that Covington would pay off to be by his side. Thank you, Chrome, for the donation. Now, back to this one. Unless you're talking about these two, then that's a whole other that's a whole other argument you could make. But yeah, Sanchez has he's been in the game for a long time. Now, even though he's kind of honed his skills in that process, he's still the type of fighter to kind of lead in to a fight trading serious blows and without any concern for himself, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I would think, because it's always made him the exciting type of fight. But on that same note, taking that much damage over that much time is certainly not healthy for him, and honestly, this can be extremely damaging, and most certainly has taken an effect on how he might perform this Saturday night. Also, Sanchez's best attribute is still his grappling. He's not the strongest. He is not the strongest wrestler in the world, particularly at 170 pounds, where he's always kind of been undersized. But only the true great grapplers that you could say have really been able to compete with him on the mat. So let's move on to Pereira. The problem with Pereira, or the problem that he has here, is the fact that he's up against such an explosive athlete. Now, I'm just going to start by throwing out there that Pereira isn't a complete fighter by any means. If I had to be perfectly honest, I don't like him much at all. I said this in the beginning, so this could be a completely biased pick. As we saw in his fight with Tristan Connolly, he's kind of a showboater, Michel Pereira. And I don't like that he comes into the octagon and he just tries to put on this weird acrobatic show for everybody. He says he didn't gas himself out with all those weird acrobatics that he did inside the cage, but it was pretty clear that he did gas himself out in that last fight. Now, add in the fact that he's got another 9 losses to his name, it's certainly difficult to root for the guy. Pereira can almost certainly win this fight if he can land, because as we've seen, when he does land, he can, he definitely has the ability to put his opponents away. However, I think while Diego's durability isn't what it once was, it's still pretty apparent here that Pereira is much less likely to land that killer blow on an even slower Sanchez. So bottom line for this fight, guys, I truly fuck, I can't talk tonight. What is going on? I truly feel that we're going to see another weird acrobatic stunt pulled by Michel Pereira. He's always kind of been that kind of guy who goes in there and does stupid shit just for the attention. So I think we're definitely going to see that again. Diego has almost he's made a career out of using incredible conditioning to kind of force his opponents to wilt, which I think is what we're going to see again. I'm going to lean towards Diego here. If he can get a tired Pereira down, I think that I'm willing to suggest that he can also finish him off. So I'm going to go with Sanchez by KO TKO. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. All right. Vigo Stockholm says soy is in all foods, bro. Pereira, another retarded Johnny Walker. D-Russ says tough twisting blues. Nightmare Filthy Sanchez for the win. Shannon Stewart says Sanchez. Diego for sure. Where's your husband? He's not my husband, but he's in the other room. Unwonderful. McGregor. Diego has more tools in this fight. He's a good pick. Thank you, man. I would agree. Diego more interested in getting his head split open. Daydream says Mark Roberts. Diego says Flat Earth Deacons. Dirty Sanchez says a tour. Post Reloaded says haha. And it says Diego.
Trump's hair is on fire!
Thank you, Chrome.
Trump's hair is on fire! Donald Trump is on fire! Trump's hair is on fire!
Chrome.
Both these niggas look like they worship the devil. I see evil in their eyes. Both probably have a secret hidden gravesite somewhere, where a bunch of twinks and trannies are buried. Diego is a...
Why does it keep cutting off like that? Does anybody know why it's doing that? Diego is a closet gag who likes to sniff his teammates' jock straps. Does anybody know why it's doing this? Every time it gets to like the end of a donation, it just stops reading it. Thank you, Chrome. I appreciate it. And shout out to Mystic Roots in the chat, our latest sponsor. Guys, everyone drop the fire emojis. He's dropping the fire emojis right now. Drop the fire emojis in the chat and let him know that you see him and welcome him, our latest addition to the family. Thank you to Mystic Roots. All right, guys, let's get to the main event of the evening. Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz. Now, I I know a lot of people think that the winner of this fight is going to be, shooting for that light heavyweight title fight. That light heavyweight title might be up for grabs here soon, unless the UFC decides to either rematch Jones and Reyes, which I don't think is going to happen right away, or go in another direction altogether with Jones, as both of these men who are fighting on Saturday night are both on strong winning streaks. Blachowicz has won 6 of his last 7 fights, and Anderson hasn't been beaten since 2017 and has won his last 4 fights. So there's a lot of reason to believe that we might get some individuals who could be contending for the title very, very soon. So let's start with Anderson. Let's just start by saying Anderson is a
man, you better back up or you're going to go to sleep. Man, you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Fuck Mystic Roots. You're taking everything I work for, motherfucker.
No, not fuck Mystic Roots, Crow. We actually want to... It's... What we love about Mystic is he's not only a sponsor but a member of the community. So he's very involved, and I think a lot of people appreciate that more than anything. So you can't say that, Crow. You just can't. Sorry, I don't support... Listen, you're entitled to your opinion, but I don't support it. So thank you to Chrome for the donation and Mystic Roots for the sponsorship. All right. Anderson's also a relatively good wrestler. Now, we did see him knock out Johnny Walker in their last fight, a guy who was arguably on a speedy way up to a title shot. I don't really take that knockout too seriously, though, simply because it was clear that Walker had gotten a little bit ahead of himself in the beginning of his fight, and perhaps he got a bit too cocky, and I think he knew that, and I think Anderson knew that, and Anderson saw that guard kind of let down by Walker and capitalized on it. His 3 wins before Walker all came by way of decision, so that tells you that Walker definitely just kind of had that guard down, and Anderson saw the weakness there. Now, sure, Anderson does carry the power, but he's also a much more subtle boxer, which is not going to bode well for him with an opponent like Yan. He is capable of fighting with the big stiff jabs and using those punches to kind of set up his takedowns and vice versa, but the real question would obviously be, is he as good a striker as Jan Blachowicz? And I say no. Jan Blachowicz, as far as he's concerned, he hasn't exactly closed all the holes in his wrestling game, which obviously wouldn't bode well for him against a decent wrestler like Anderson. Quite honestly, Jan hasn't fought a truly excellent wrestler since his 2017 loss to Patrick Cummins. But that being said, I do feel he has improved significantly where his grappling is concerned, as well as in the clinch. I do know that he has won 2 fights by submission over the last couple of years. He's also a BJJ black belt, which will come in real handy against someone like Anderson. Another thing that Jan is truly good at is his kickboxing and his boxing. He loves to attack the body, and he puts his opponents in vulnerable positions from there and then capitalizes on that, and I think that's really going to be an excellent advantage for him against someone like Anderson, who's not very good at that. So, bottom line for this fight, guys, I truly feel that Blachowicz is going to work the body of Anderson throughout the fight and start to kind of open him up a little bit. Anderson has been KO'd 3 times in the past, and it's clear that he definitely does not have a chin that is Gastelum strong. So I do worry that if Jan... I worry for Jan, actually, that if it comes down to him having to control the fight from the ground, he might be in a little bit of trouble, but with his exceptional grappling skills and his BJJ skills, I don't feel it's really going to be enough to kind of overcome him, and I think Jan is a tough fight for Anderson to take, and I think it would be silly to underestimate Jan. So I'm going to go with Blachowicz for the win by KO TKO. He's going to hit him with that heavy strike in the first round. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. Arturo says, and where's the triple champ? 2 joints flat. That's excellent, my bro. And H. Not Anderson looking too good lately. Watch out. He will KO him. Vigo says, JBH, you are more passionate about cooking. Well, you're more passionate about jerking off than you are in the chat. Oh.
Who the
And
fuck
then you
is
gotta
that
back
guy?
up or you're gonna go to sleep. And then you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Chrome.
Fuck that shit. I say whatever the hell I want. I hate everybody, you should know that by now. Mystic roots these nuts in yours mouth. Fuck everybody. Corey Anderson is a cross-dresser.
Still stopped him. Corey Anderson is a cross-dresser. Stipe's brother is going to KO that twink. All right. Well, listen, your opinion is stated. Appreciate it. Moss is passionate about the Lux Bidet. Boom Roasted, says Ann. Ray says, LOL, Boom Roasted. Love jacking off, bro, says President Vigo. Chris Houston says, agreed. Vigo says, JBH should be doing a cooking show. Vigo Stockholm should be doing porn, but I don't see you doing that. Chrome, no love for Canada. Cut his mic. What the fuck is this madness? Chrome just mad because he hit black and stuff. Wow, she just shamed Chrome so hard. Muted, says Flat Earth. No, I don't know what's going on. The end of the donations aren't playing for some reason. All right. So that's my picks for Jan Blachowicz versus Corey Anderson, number 2. Let me just go through one more time who all of my picks are here for you guys. Here we go. We'll do this. Lando Vannata versus Yancy Medeiros. I went with Medeiros by KO TKO. And then we've got Rogerio Bontorin versus Ray Borg. I went with Bontorin by decision. Brok Weaver. Oh, wait. Let me show Brok Weaver's face here. Versus Kazula Vargas. I went with Weaver by decision. And then we've got Montana De La Rosa versus
And then you better back
Romero.
up or you're gonna go to sleep. And then you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Carnage.
I don't think Corey has a bad chin. If you go back and watch those Corey Anderson KOs, he got hit with perfectly timed and powerful shots. OSP, Jimmy. He lost.
He lost when he was young to Gain and lost to a split. He will beat Jan. Mark my words. I disagree, man. I understand, like, a lot of people are going Jan. And by the way, please note that it just shut off again. But I get it. I understand why you went with Corey Anderson, and I was tempted to go the same way, but then I was really thinking about it.
And then you better back up or
and
you're
it just
gonna go
didn't
to
make
sleep.
sense.
And then you need to back up or you can go to sleep too.
Damn that nigga fighting a ghost. Go, he's supposed to beat a nigga he can't see.
Who? Oh, this guy. Wait, this guy? This guy right here? You mean Brok Weaver and Vargas? Vargas is fighting a ghost? All right, let me move on. Montana De La Rosa. Let me get rid of Weaver here. Versus Romero Borella. I went with Borella by decision. And then Diego Sanchez versus Michel Pereira. Of course, I had to go with the dirty Sanchez. And I went with Sanchez by KO, TKO. And then we've got Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz. And I went with Jan Blachowicz. I'm sorry. Jan Blachowicz by KO, TKO. So those are my picks for the evening. Thank you for telling me your guys' picks for the evening. We will see you guys tomorrow again for Fight Briefing at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you guys tune in because we will be playing the points game and you don't want to miss out on that. And then we'll be live again this weekend for UFC Fight Night 167 and BKFC in Miami. So don't be an a-hole. Be an MMA hole.